Now let me start out by quickly saying Happy Star Wars Day to everybody out there, and we of course got a gift for the occasion from Disney and Lucasfilm, that being Tales of the Empire on Disney+, which I'm happy to say, and do be warned, there will be major spoilers for it ahead, but I'm happy to say it was pretty good and enjoyable overall. I did like it for the most part, though as usual with me, there were certainly things I liked more so than others, and we will discuss what those things are. I will cover the good and the not so good here in this review, as well as give some other thoughts or discuss things I found curious or interesting or just noteworthy. This will not be a full-on play-by-play review of the episodes, but rather talking about the aspects I think are worth talking about or discussing. And so what I think I'm going to do, since there are two distinct stories to be had, is I'm going to break this review into two parts or two videos, starting with the Morgan Elsbeth story, since that is the one they put first. And her story begins back in Season 4 of The Clone Wars, actually. It starts during that episode called Massacre, which saw the Night Sisters slaughtered by Grievous and his droids at the behest of Dooku, after the Night Sisters had tried to assassinate him, but obviously failed. And right away I have to comment on just how gorgeous this all looks. And I'm not just talking about the new model for Grievous being put into action, which looks both glorious and terrifying, and along with his actions in this episode, does the character some justice and makes him feel a bit more like the version we saw back in the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, not the one who always ran away in the Clone Wars animated series. But also here I have to say how good literally everything looks. It's amazing just how far Star Wars animation has come since Season 4 of the Clone Wars, when we saw this battle or massacre or slaughter the first time around, which looked great back in the day and had already come a long way from the Clone Wars movie and the first few seasons of the show. It is awesome to see this animation style ever evolving and looking better and better each time we see it. But anyway, as we already knew, the Night Sisters end up slaughtered by Grievous, and afterwards Morgan ends up being found and taken in by the Mountain Clan, a different kind of clan of the Night Sisters. This is all kind of going back to the EU, which is really cool. But anyway, right away her Night Sister powers kind of fizzle or fade away, explaining why later on when we see her for the first time in Mandalorian Season 2, why she doesn't have the white skin or the markings we normally see with Night Sisters. And she is told by the mother of the Mountain Clan that the power of the Night Sisters broke, their spells have faded. Which, as I just said, explains why she doesn't have the look of them anymore, or when we will see her again. But it doesn't explain why someone like Merrin still very much did have their look and full power, and I do mean full power. Merrin does some pretty crazy things in the Jedi series of games, which is where she originally comes from, just in case you haven't played those games before and don't know who she is, though you should play them. They are very good games. Anyway here, no, I'm not upset at this or anything or calling it a lore or canon inconsistency. I just think it is interesting to note, and the simple explanation could be that Merrin has done something, a ritual of some kind perhaps, to reestablish her connection to or to sort of reignite the magic within her. And Morgan never does this, or should I say never does it, till we see her do it in the Ahsoka series, where she gets the Talzin blade and gets her markings and all of that back. Either way, the first episode here is fine for what it is. There's not a whole lot else worth noting. It's a pretty simple, straightforward story. It's a fine story again, and it's mainly Morgan using fear to convince a few of the younger Mountain Clan sisters, including the daughter of the mother of the clan, to go and get some weapons in case the droids come for them, which the mother basically says they're not going to do that unless you provoke them. And sure enough, that's basically what they do. They go and get some weapons, which the droids see them doing, and then they end up attacking them for going and getting weapons. And the clan mother's daughter ends up dying, though the clan mother does show up and uses some light side kind of magic, or something that looks very much like that. Again, this is kind of going back to some EU stuff, and she ends up kind of destroying all the droids and saves Morgan, but can't save her own daughter. And like I said, it's a fine episode, a fine origin story for Morgan, and it shows how your own vengeance or following the dark path, the episode is called The Path of Fear, which is the first step to the dark side as Yoda has told us, how that can lead to ruin for yourself or others, how inspiring fear in others is a tool of the dark side even. Alright, the next episode then is, well, for better or worse, it tries very, very hard to establish a sort of link between Thrawn and Morgan in order to, I think, give more understanding or meaning to Morgan's loyalty to Thrawn that we see in the Ahsoka series. As we know, thanks to that series, she will even make a giant hyperdrive ship to go and save him from the other galaxy. And conveniently enough, Thrawn ends up with Night Sisters in that other galaxy, which I never really thought about just how strange or coincidental that is until right now, or until watching this episode. That Thrawn ends up making this sort of partnership with Morgan, a Night Sister, or kind of former Night Sister, and then ultimately ends up, quite randomly, you would think, but he ends up being taken by Purrgil to a whole other galaxy, but happens to find more Night Sisters there, or right where he gets dropped off, basically, by the Purrgil. Ones Morgan would want to sort of reconnect with. Again, that is all a heck of a coincidence. But anyway, trying to ignore that, it turns out that the TIE Defender design or the program originates from Morgan. She designed them, I guess? Which is kind of the reason why Thrawn finds her or seeks her out. As we know from Rebels, Thrawn is a strong proponent of the TIE Defender program. And when we see her here, she is first trying to sell this design to the Empire, but they're all like, nah, we're just going to take your resources. We don't like the design. It's too costly. And that's that. Which is then when we see Captain Pellaeon show up, who is originally from the Thrawn trilogy back in the day, as many of you probably know. But he has also shown up recently in The Mandalorian Season 3. Anyway, he questions Morgan mainly about wanting to know what motivates her. And what truly does motivate her is her people, or what happened to them that she wants to get revenge for them. And that's rather interesting because we know what motivates Thrawn, or what we learn motivates him in the new Thrawn trilogy books, is his people. He has, according to the books, he has joined the Empire to sort of ascertain if the Empire can help his people, if it can help the Chiss Ascendancy fight a species of beings known as the Grisk, which are a great threat to that part of the galaxy, and eventually, could come to this part of the galaxy as well. However, that whole idea or plot from the books seems to have been perhaps dropped by Filoni in the Ahsoka series. Nothing in that series suggests or even hints at anything motivating Thrawn beyond wanting to serve the Empire or see it saved or restored. And even here, when Morgan meets with Thrawn, he talks about destroying the growing rebellion, though he also does have a really great line about how those who seek power and wealth, who will trade lives for profit, will create a weak or disillusioned military. And so what really interests him about her is that she isn't doing this for wealth or power, not entirely anyway. And when Morgan admits to Thrawn that it mainly is about her people, not wanting to see them forgotten, that's when he essentially accepts her and kind of partners up with her. And sadly, I think I found this 2-minute talk between them in this episode more intriguing than pretty much anything out of either one of them from the Ahsoka series. Thrawn certainly felt far less generic here and more like, well, he felt a little more like Thrawn. Moving on, the third episode seems to take place shortly before the 5th episode of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, the one where Ahsoka is already on the planet and Mando shows up looking for a Jedi to give Grogu to, and he is directed there by Bo-Katan, who we hear at the very end of the episode. Bo-Katan, picked up the distress signal and must have then passed it on to Ahsoka. Thus, I suppose, explaining why Bo-Katan knew where Ahsoka was and could tell Mando. But anyway, I don't know why that really needed to be explained. No one was really questioning why Bo-Katan knew where Ahsoka was. It could have been explained any number of ways. But anyway, this episode sees a New Republic ambassador, originally from the planet. She comes back home, hoping to see Corvus brought into the Republic. But no one there, the people of Corvus, even seem to know that the Empire has fallen, and they're kind of leery about any of this going so well. The ambassador then confronts Morgan, tells her that her crimes are well known and that she should surrender, despite there only being like 6 of them and Morgan having more than enough to take care of 6 people. But she tells Morgan to surrender, but Morgan obviously isn't going to do that, and she has them all killed. But as mentioned before, a distress signal does go out. The ambassador, or the droid, manages to get one out, which is picked up by Bo-Katan. And, well, for the most part, what this episode does is kind of set up the aforementioned Mandalorian episode, the one with Ahsoka. It is pretty much a direct prelude to it, and it is fine for what it is, again. However, there is one rather interesting thing to note in this episode, or that could be hinting at something much, much bigger to come, which is when, after Morgan tells her people they're going to be working night and day now, she tells them, "But you do so knowing you will be part of an effort to save our galaxy from ruin." And sure, she could just mean they're helping to restore the Empire and that the Empire will, bring order back to the galaxy and overthrow the New Republic and all that good stuff. It'll be saved that way. Or she maybe could mean something else is out there and is coming. Something Thrawn once told her about, That being the Grisk, who I was talking about before from the new Thrawn books, in that they're the reason why Thrawn joined the Empire and all that. He wants the Empire's help against them for his people. And yeah, there's a really good chance this is just wishful thinking out of someone who really enjoyed the new canon Thrawn trilogies and who didn't like that Thrawn seemed pretty shallow in the Ahsoka series and like none of that or what happened in those books was canon anymore. And instead Thrawn seemed to be just a for the Empire guy or wanted to see it restored simply because he was a for the Empire guy. But anyway, if that was meant to truly mean something bigger was coming or not, or if it was alluding to the Grisk or not, as I said before, this episode was mainly about giving some backstory or context to that episode of The Mandalorian, the 5th one in Season 2. And this whole series seemed about setting things up or explaining the Ahsoka series better, mainly what motivates Morgan and how she meets and becomes kind of loyal to Thrawn, though I'm honestly not so sure it does a really good job of that latter part. I still don't know why Morgan would be so loyal to Thrawn that she builds a ship to go and save him, other than the fact that, yeah, he did end up with other Night Sisters and she wants to save her people, which all just seems a little too convenient upon further review. And so, to sum it up here, I don't know, I thought these episodes or this little story was fine and enjoyable enough. It was pretty good. Nothing special, but certainly not anything bad, and if you really like the Ahsoka series, you're probably going to like how this sets up so much backstory from that. And I can only hope that what Morgan says about saving the galaxy from ruin, that it isn't a throwaway line or isn't just her saying we need to bring back the Empire because they're so great. I hope it is alluding to the Grisk and the bigger story with Thrawn set up by the novels, but I am highly doubtful about that. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of the Morgan Elsbeth episodes of Tales of the Empire. Did you enjoy them? Did you find them intriguing? Or maybe you just kind of found them blah. Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, and next time will be the Barris episodes reviewed. Thanks for watching.